The Sahel's night was deceptively quiet. Captain Ibrahim Traore stood on the terrace of the presidential residence in Ouagadougou, the capital of Burkina Faso, listening to the distant chirp of crickets and the soft hum of the city beyond the compound walls. The red horizon of dusk painted the sky, smoke from 100 sunlit haze settling onto a country weary of war. In the fading light, Traore's strong, weathered face bore the tension of a leader surrounded by enemies, some of them hidden in plain sight. As the youngest president in the country's history, he had seized power in the coup of September 2022, ousting his former commander, Paul-Henri Sandaogo Damiba. The memory of that bold night still weighed on him, soldiers in dusty boots, the sudden silence of gunfire, and the solemn promise that change was coming. Now, more than a year later, change had come, but not without a price. Each cheer from the crowd below rang hollow, offset by the knowledge that at least 4 times since his rise to power, Traore's own generals had tried to unseat him. He closed his eyes and breathed deeply. The night air was warm, tinged with sandalwood smoke from incense burning in the president's office and the scent of jasmine in the garden. Around him, the presidential compound felt both fortress and cage. In the darkness, he imagined shadows moving between official portraits of the nation's martyrs. How many of those faces had once been friends? Outside, the country's drums of discontent pulsed insistently. Mali and Niger had fallen to coups, and jihadist attacks threatened villages every day. A lonely olive tree in the courtyard creaked under the weight of secrets, and Traore wondered if he had become as isolated as it appeared. Yet at this moment of silence, a familiar sound crackled from the radio transmitter at his feet. 2 voices were speaking rapidly in More, the native tongue of Ouagadougou. They reported a story unfolding in real time. Another coup attempt. Assassination thwarted. A chill ran through Traore as he strained to catch every word. Even from this distance, he was used to threats by now, but the wording struck a nerve. An assassination attempt meant one thing. Someone had tried to kill him, and they had failed. The echo of the announcer's words still lingered in Traore's mind as he crossed the marble floor of his private study, stepping over the soft glow of a map lamp onto the veranda. In the reception hall, officers in crisp fatigues were gathering, the brass of their uniform buttons catching the lamplight, their faces drawn. Major Soro, the head of the Presidential Guard and Traore's oldest friend, fell in beside him. Soro's normally steady hands trembled slightly as he clasped Traore's shoulder. "He said it was foiled, Patrice," Soro whispered, using Traore's Christian name in a rare show of intimacy. A bomb planted in the inner courtyard, discovered just in time. His brow was furrowed, eyes darting towards the guard towers. Even here, safety was an illusion. News had already spread through Ouagadougou's dry streets and mud brick homes. Traore had endured yet another attempt on his life. This made it 4 known coup or assassination plots since he took power less than 2 years ago. Everyone in the government talked in hushed tones about a network of conspirators. Some still active officers, others retired soldiers, even a few civilians and activists caught up in a desperate plan. This network, according to intelligence briefings Traore had seen, had secured funds from unnamed foreign sources and was aimed at destabilizing the institutions of Burkina Faso, as the official press release dryly put it. It sounded almost clinical, destabilizing institutions, but to Traore it meant death and chaos. Traore remembered the shock of hearing about the previous attempts. Last year in September, 4 officers were detained on suspicion of plotting against him, and just months ago, an entire scheme, major in official speak, had been traced to safe houses in Ivory Coast. Each time, he survived by a hair's breadth. Now, still in his midnight blue uniform, he stood beneath the cedars, and listened. The man who ran his soldiers from a distance was no longer surprised by treachery, but the sting remained the same. "Is it true," he asked Soro quietly, "that it was orchestrated by Damiba's people?" The reference to his deposed predecessor's uncle hung in the air. Rumors swirled that the mastermind was none other than Colonel Paulo, the cold-haired uncle of Paul-Henri Damiba himself, a man who had never accepted the coup that removed his nephew from power. The news agency, Cactus, cited in international reports weeks later, would confirm it. The explosion plotters were led by Damiba's own kin. Tonight, though, only shadowy figures existed. Soro's face was grim. "We heard things," he admitted, "but first we saved the convoy." Traoré nodded. Earlier tonight, the motorcade carrying 2 visiting Russian military advisors had driven off, sirens wailing. It was later learned that a remote bomb had been placed on the roadway. Bomb-sniffing units had detected it just in time. The advisors' visit had been truncated, their meeting broken off. Terrorist groups in the region were known to have targeted foreign allies. But this was different. It was a direct warning. Even his allies under armored Humvees were not safe. Now the flash of a new red light caught Traoré's eye. A security alert on the compound's CCTV monitors. A blip moved past the cemetery wall in the rose garden, caught on infrared. A figure in black slipping away from the guard's view. Traoré and Soro exchanged a glance. They had to move. A roar shattered the night's calm. Not far away, at the edge of the presidential courtyard, a thunderous explosion ripped through the air. Traoré's head snapped up. Debris erupted in the garden's lotus pond. Vines trembled along the palace wall. Guard towers blared sirens into the sky. Fire and smoke rose behind the residence as troops sprinted past Traoré and Soro toward the commotion. A reinforced door had been blown off its hinges. Someone had tried to detonate a bomb inside the inner courtyard, a kamikaze plan to reach the heart of power. But the bomb technicians had been watching suspicious activity. An orderly from the canteen reported a leak of fuel drums behind the kitchens. The bomb squad had acted. The charge had exploded outside, a misfired attempt. Still, the sound had echoed through the halls of power. Traoré's pulse raced. Amid the confusion, he saw a young guard lying on the ground, smoke curling from his shoulder. Captain Amin, one of his newest bodyguards, had taken shrapnel. Soro dropped to his knees, checking Amin's wound, his face tight. Traoré barked orders across the chaos. "Lock down the palace, check every corridor, bring back our man." Within minutes, the courtyard was flooded with pale blue lights. Officers with rifles fanned out, scanning fountains and flower beds for the saboteur. Traoré stood rigid, dripping a mix of rainwater and pool water from his hair. He had dashed through a sprinkler to reach the scene faster, eyes flicking from Soro's face to the guards. All his senses screamed danger, but he kept his composure. "They wanted me dead, but I'm still alive." In the courtyard, a figure bolted from behind a fallen column, one of the compound gardeners, hackles up, rifle in hand. Officer Tia, a veteran sergeant from the artillery unit, sprang forward and tackled the man. The black-clad figure snarled, twisting violently. Soro arrived and hit him with the butt of his pistol. The conspirator slumped, unconscious. Traoré stood over the prisoner as they rolled him onto the damp grass. Under the bright halogen lights, the man's face was a mask of rage and fear. He had thought Traoré dead. He had dared to bring death to the president's very doorstep. Now his eyes widened as he met Traoré's gaze. "Who sent him?" Traoré demanded, though his voice was steady. The interrogator's voice of command sank deep into the night. The young guard gave a soft bark and the man spat. "You'll never know." "Start talking," Soro said. "We know you're from the government house. There are no strangers here at midnight." Traoré felt a flicker of anger. This man had crept in disguised as a gardener, had set explosives under his windows, and still dared silence. But he had to remain cool. Each second in the chaos was precious. "Bring the interrogation photos," Traore ordered the guards. Within the next minute, officers were lifting the suspect into a van. Traore watched them drive the van away. He would only later learn that the stranger had a false Tunisian ID and a phony birth certificate. For now, the focus was his safety and that of his staff. Sirens and shouting swirled around Traore. He motioned for Soro to follow him to the main hall. Through the pane glass doors spilled light, shadow, and sound of relief. People from the residents and staff ran to positions. The bomb had failed to breach the main building. Aside from the one wounded guard, no high-ranking casualties. But as Traore settled into a makeshift command center, his mind raced with questions. How many plots were there? Who inside the palace had turned? By dawn, the city of Ouagadougou was buzzing in an uneasy state of alert. The night's explosion had awakened a nation. Soldiers inspected checkpoints, weary merchants shuttered their stalls under heavy locks, and curious neighbors shared rumors on dirt roads illuminated by the morning sun. It was still early January 2024, a month into the new year, and Burkina Faso had already survived more treachery than many nations see in a decade. Inside the fortress-like perimeter of the palace, Captain Traore addressed his remaining inner circle in the cabinet room. The wooden table was strewn with security reports and photographs of the arrested saboteur. Around it sat anxious eyes. Soro and other generals, the head of domestic intelligence, even one civilian minister. Traore's face, illuminated by the dangling chandelier, was deceptively calm. He lifted a photograph and placed it face up on the table. The captive from last night stared back, a young man in plain clothes, defiance in his eyes. "This attempt was not a random act of terror," Traore began, his voice low but firm. "This was a carefully planned coup aimed straight at the heart of our republic." The others were silent, hanging on his words. He continued, pacing slowly. "We have lost one good soldier, but our democracy stands. Thanks to alert guards, this bomb went off in the outer courtyard, not in the hall where I work." He paused, letting the relief at this fact settle. "Our enemy's aim was clear. Intelligence suggests it was orchestrated by officers in our own army, the same old names circulating in the rumor mills." General Kabore, a stoic man of few words, nodded. "The media already reports it, sir. Cactus called it an assassination attempt, one that nearly exploded inside these walls." Traore's jaw tightened. The foreign press was piecing it together. Damiba's uncle, explosion at residence. They had published on the wires within days. Damiba's uncle, Colonel Paulo, was reportedly the mastermind. Colonel Paulo had fled into exile after the fall of his nephew, but his influence ran deep. The revelation of a relative plotting such violence cut to Traore's gut. It confirmed a grim truth. Every shot fired over the past year, from the borders to the bunkers, was connected to this. Now in this room, among trusted people, Traore named the campaign. "They think breaking me will break Burkina Faso. They're wrong." His voice rose slightly, burning away the fatigue. "We've seen at least 4 coup attempts since I came to power. Each was stopped. The people still rally behind us by the thousands when word spreads. They look to me to bring security. And I will." He turned to Soro. "Prepare the guard. I want surveillance increased. We'll search every call, intercept every signal. No one is above suspicion until this is solved." It was a command, but in truth, Traore felt the grip of paranoia. Hours earlier, he had been safe behind palace walls. Now he realized those walls were penetrated. Who among them had leaked intel? His men were loyal, some to the point of heroism, but human flaws and secret allegiances could poison any bloodline. Tonight, he resolved, he could no longer take trust for granted. He recalled the face of the captive, that cold young thug who tried to murder him. The name had not been obtained, but intelligence whispered it anyway. Cheiko Diallo, an ex-con turned gunrunner, fed and armed by Damiba's syndicate. The man's job was to die in that courtyard, to finish the job Colonel Paulo started. The question Traoré kept to himself: who had helped Diallo get in? If the palace was a fortress, there must have been a door left unlocked on purpose. In the morning light, with the dust settled, Traoré walked along the eastern wall of the compound, his boots crunching on the gravel. Soldiers had hauled away the bomb debris and repaired the fence. But Traoré's mind was miles away, replaying the past night's images. Each unexploded brick was a spark in the darkness that might have taken him. He went to his desk, opened the safe beneath it, and withdrew a worn black notebook. This book contained everything: notes on terrorist cells, details of meetings, lists of supporters and opponents, a record he kept in case it ever had to be unraveled. He flipped to a blank page and began writing, his handwriting sharp and deliberate. Damiba's uncle led Mastermind. Colonel Kabor, no involvement. Loyalists, Captain Issouf, to be monitored. Names flowed: ministers, officers, civilians, those he trusted and those he didn't. What started as a personal log soon resembled a ledger of friends and foes. He stopped occasionally to think: would writing names down somehow summon their fate? If they die, may history judge them justly. This was his list in the shadows, he realized, one that must be as long as the threat was real. At exactly midday following custom, the colonels and ambassadors were summoned to the palace courtyard. Traoré stood on the temporary stage erected for this emergency announcement. The warm sun cast deep shadows on the faces below. Journalists, military officers, foreign diplomats. His wife and daughter, usually hidden from the eyes of the world, stayed behind closed doors. Traoré's voice boomed through loudspeakers, smooth but grave. My fellow Burkinabe, today our nation survived a grave test. His glittering silver uniform jacket was marked with blood of the fallen guard, washed away already on his sleeve. Yesterday, conspirators within and beyond our borders tried to sow terror and chaos at the gates of our democracy. They placed a bomb on our soil to kill one man, their chosen enemy. But I stand before you alive, and more determined than ever. Gasps and claps rippled through the crowd. The foreign press had cameras trained. Traoré delivered the words like a leader born to them. This betrayal was orchestrated by those who would rather see us defeated than free. They may carry the name of Damiba, but Burkina Faso has shown we do not live in yesterday's divisions. We remain united. Let them come in shadows if they dare. We will greet them in the light. Their attempt to divide us has only strengthened our resolve. In the following silence, one of his generals stepped forward and pinned a medal on Traoré's uniform, as much a trophy of survival as an honor. Traoré offered the general a tired smile. This public facade of strength mattered. Radio stations replayed his speech with soaring music. Villagers watched newscasts and cheered. But as the cameras focused on him, Traoré caught sight of a familiar face at the edge of the gathering. Foreign Minister Jean-Marie Traoré, no relation, shaking his head off camera. A sign of dismay or the bright sunlight? Traoré gave no outward reaction, but inside he wondered how many such small signs of dissent flickered in the crowd, in the capital, across the countryside. When the crowd had dispersed and a new day's work awaited, Traoré returned to his study. He locked the door and finally allowed himself to feel the weight of this reality. The shattered dreams of soldiers lying in battle, the petrified children on rooftops that night, and the countless whispers that told of a plot larger than any one man. The attack had been foiled, his people safe for now, but the memory of it was etched deeply. On his private table lay the book he had started. He opened it again and skimmed what he wrote. Names, notes, shadow list. The words seemed to float before him. There would be more pages yet. Traoré's gaze lifted to the marble bust of Thomas Sankara, the late revolutionary hero, in the corner. Sankara had been betrayed by his own comrades once too. "We will find the others," Traoré whispered to the silent statue. Outside, a lone church bell tolled, noon clear. A new dawn had broken over Burkina Faso. But in this new light, Captain Ibrahim Traoré knew this. The shadow list was only growing, and his country's future depended on pulling each name into the light. Sources. Reports confirm that this plot was described in media as an attempted assassination and coup, purportedly led by the uncle of former President Damiba. It was noted as at least the fourth such coup attempt since Traoré took power in September 2022, with elements allegedly operating from neighboring Ivory Coast. This narrative has been crafted around those events and records.